Hello there, my fellow aviators. Today's video is from the couch because it's going to be a little bit different than things you've normally seen here on the Fly with Trent channel. Think of this as a little bit of an experiment, and I hope you guys really like it. So this video is about brutally honest advice that I'd like to have given myself 20 years ago. And the premise of this is, like I know I got all the Inc. 5000 awards and the plaques on the wall behind me, and it makes me look Mr. Super Successful. But trust me when I tell you that I have made more mistakes and lost more money in my business endeavors throughout my 3-decade-plus business career than you can possibly imagine. And I would love nothing more than to have you watch this video and achieve the outcome of avoiding all of those mistakes that I made, and also seeing a clear path to your own success, however you define it. I'm going to define it loosely as quality of life, abundant finances, and security, which maybe that is the same thing for you, but a clear path to that type of success, regardless of whether your career is aviation or not, without having to work 24 hours a day. If that sounds interesting to you, please do give this video a like, because as I mentioned, this is an experiment. I don't know if I'm going to do more videos like this here on the Fly with Trent channel, but stay tuned because here we go. Let me give you a little bit of background on why I decided to do this. As you guys know, the Fly with Trent channel has become very popular very quickly, and no one has been more surprised by that fact than this guy. I've been on YouTube for a long time, but in my prior life as a marketing guy and an entrepreneur, I never had the type of success and growth rate that I've seen with the Fly with Trent channel. So it left me thinking to myself, well, okay, so I have this personal brand called Fly with Trent. What am I going to do with it? And I've been reading a lot here lately, and a new mentor of mine, although I don't think he knows he's a mentor of mine yet, talked about the way to develop a personal brand is to talk about things you're interested in. And I'm interested in flying. I'm interested in making money through both investing in real estate and business ownership. So I'm going to guess that there's a few of you who might share some of those interests. And for those of you, maybe it's a big portion of my audience, maybe it's a little portion of my audience. I don't really know. So it's up to you guys to tell me. This video is the first in an exploration of, could the Fly with Trent channel broaden its horizons a little bit? Still talk a lot about aviation. Maybe I should be talking about some other stuff that I'm doing, or where I have a lot of experience, or where I've learned a lot of painful lessons, and I can help you from making those similar mistakes. So let's talk a little bit about my story just for context, and then I'm going to get into specifically the story of a business that I built and how I sold it and what I learned and how that cascaded into other businesses and kind of put me where I am today, and then how I see the future going forward. And I really think that much of what I've been through and much of what I'm facing and much of what lies ahead of me is probably very similar with a decent chunk of you guys and gals. So again, I'm hoping that this video is of great interest to you. I started my life after realizing that, going down the aviation path in the Canadian military was not going to work for me because of budget cutbacks. Having grown up very poor, my parents were on welfare and no college education. So no silver spoon for this guy. I needed to go into sales to make any money. And so I did that, and I started making a lot of money. In particular, once I got into the financial services space. So this is 30 years ago. I was making $200,000 a year, which, as you might imagine, was a lot of money 30 years ago, especially for a single guy in his 20s. And I had the house and the boat and the cars and the motorcycle and the whole works. As a matter of fact, I even got written up in a book many years after the fact called Atomic Habits. I'm in chapter 16. Maybe some of you have read that. It's a book by James Clear. It's been a bestseller for a long time. And it talks about this thing called the paperclip strategy. You can Google it. I'm not going to get into it in this video. But suffice to say, as a result of my work ethic, sheer brute force, kind of like what I used to get through flight school in 91 days, I had a lot of success. And then I got to a point in my life where I thought, gosh darn it, I really want to be an entrepreneur. And this is where, in hindsight, if I knew what I knew now, I would have taken a very, very different path. And I would have saved myself a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of frustrations. But nonetheless, here's what I did, and I'm going to impart my lessons, my painful lessons, as I explain the story, with the hopes of preventing you guys from making similar mistakes. I started this business called Durand Systems. It was an IT services business, and I really didn't put a lot of thought into it. I just knew I wanted to have a business. I knew how to sell stuff. And so I found this guy who I made my co-founder, who knew how to do all the technical bits that I didn't know how to do. And I said, hey, if we go, and he was working for an IT company, and I said, hey, if we just go and do the same thing that you're already doing, and I'm the sales guy, do you think we could be successful? And he's like, oh yeah, no problem. So no business plan, no education. I mean, I was dumber than dumb, but nonetheless, I quit my job, my $200,000 a year job. I sold my house, and I put all of my money, literally my entire net worth, which for a 25-year-old guy was a pretty decent net worth because of the money that I was making, into this business. And what an idiot I was. So I started what was an IT professional services business. And so we're going to hear me talk about product businesses and professional services businesses. One is significantly better than the other. And let me give you a hint, professional services ain't the better one, because of margins and scalability and a bunch of things that all boil down to this thing called leverage. So I didn't understand any of that. I never went to business school. I didn't know what a business model was. I didn't understand the limitations of a professional service business, which put simply is the more customers you get, the more employees you need to do the work. So that continually drives up your fixed cost as your revenue is going up. And so your margins never really expand to any great degree. I mean, maybe they do at 20, 30, $40 million, but we never got to that size and most people never do. But professional services businesses are the most common type of business that people start either as a side gig or when they quit their job. And so hopefully with this video, a few of you might rethink that particular approach and take the approach that I'm going to explain a little later in the video. So I didn't understand what utilizations rates were. I didn't understand what gross margins were. I just said, hey man, I know how to sell stuff. And if I can sell stuff and he can push the buttons on the keyboard, we'll just get lots of customers and we'll get rich. What a joke that was. I mean, yeah, 8 years later, I sold the business for over $1 million. And so it seemed like a big victory, but if you unpack it, and this is one of the lessons that I want to share with you guys, it really wasn't that good of a deal. Because number one, I never took a paycheck out of that business for the first 5 years. And remember, I was making 200 grand a year. So pre-tax, I'm already $1 million in the hole just in lost wages. Then I was $400,000 in debt because not only did I spend all of my money to try and get this thing to become profitable, I borrowed $400,000 from an investor, not in one chunk. It was like $25,000 and then another $25,000 and then $50,000 and then it was $100,000. And so, the hole got deeper and deeper to the point where, as I talked about long times ago in previous interviews, really the only thing that kept me going through the dark times was economic pressure. In other words, if I gave up, I was going bankrupt because I had no way to pay that money back. And so the thought of going bankrupt and destroying my credit rating was absolutely terrifying to me. Like a stubborn ox, I just kept going and kept going. And by year 5, we finally broke even. And then by year 8, I sold the business. And all of those details aren't too terribly important for the purposes of this video, and they're available in other videos that I've produced on my other YouTube channel. Although there's so many videos, it might take you a while to find them. So if you really, really, really want a video about that, you can ask me in the comments, but maybe I'll make it. But my point is this. Here's like the golden takeaway. If you're thinking about starting a professional services business, doing whatever, the things that I want you to think very, very carefully about are, number one, how much lost income are you going to give up from whatever you're doing now until that thing becomes profitable? And in my case, my professional services business, because it required technology work that I didn't know how to do, automatically I had overhead. Now, if your professional services business has just your time involved in it, that's a slightly different conversation, and we're not necessarily going to go down that rabbit hole. I still don't think it's the best approach, but it could be better than what I did. So I had all that lost income. Then I had all that debt. And then I had all that stress because I had all that debt. And then because I had no income and all that debt, and I'd sold my house during one of the greatest bull markets in real estate history, I didn't own any real estate for pretty much a decade. So if you think about the $1 million that I lost in wages just in the first 5 years, I mean, eventually, I was taking about the last 3 years, about 150 to 180,000 a year out of the company. So I was sort of catching up. So we won't call those years necessarily lost income years. But that $1 million of lost income, probably plus another couple $100,000 in lost real estate equity because I didn't own any. Well, that was more than the $1.2 million that I sold it for. And of course, when I sold it, I had investors to pay back. So I didn't get the whole $1.2 million. I only ended up with, I think, like $750,000, $800,000, something like that. So it really wasn't that good of a deal. And here's the thing. We grew the business to about $3 million a year, I think, if memory serves, 2.5, $3 million a year. Most small professional services businesses don't even get that big. So they're never saleable for any meaningful amount of money. And so this whole dream of becoming an entrepreneur and getting the freedom that goes with, ends up becoming the entrepreneur's nightmare. And the only entrepreneurial freedom you have is the freedom to work 24 hours a day and never stop thinking about your business. So, am I saying that you should never start a business? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that if at all possible, you should start a product-based business. And those could be information products, it could be physical products, but product-based businesses have so much more leverage because, number one, their gross margins are significantly higher, especially on an information products business, of one which I made most of my money in my life in an information products business, which I'll tell you about in a few minutes. They're very, very scalable, as mine was. In no time flat, I sold millions of dollars worth of this information product. And so that can be an absolutely wonderful business to own. And you can automate, like one of my businesses right now for the last year, it's not information, it's software. I've done nothing. Like literally nothing, but yet I still get money out of the company because the software is what runs the business. So software, I'm not necessarily endorsing that as a first business. I'll talk more about that in this little later in this video because software is expensive and it's complicated and it's very, very competitive. But nonetheless, information products can be a fantastic business to be in. And you might be thinking, well, gosh, I have no idea what to create. And, again, this video would be hours and hours long if I talked about all of that stuff. If there's enough response to this video, I'm definitely going to go in and start sharing with you guys kind of, what I think other people could do. For this video, I'm simply just going to tell you my story. So let's talk now about Trent's transition to his first product business. And that was in 2016. And so this was as a result of a relationship that I'd formed with a guest on my podcast. For those of you who don't know, I hosted a podcast for about 10 years. This business model was pretty simple. We would partner up with manufacturers of existing products that were selling on Amazon, that the listings weren't very well optimized, and there was a lot of room for improvement. And that's all these Inc. 5000 plaques that you can only see one of them, this one, but there's another one just over there. That's what I got those plaques for, because that business grew crazy fast and was profitable almost from day one. And I only worked there for 6 months before I completely delegated myself out of all of the roles, other than sort of, chief visionary guy. So that really sort of shaped my identity as a slightly more successful entrepreneur and really a systems guy. The thing that I did that made that business grow so fast was I wrote standard operating procedures, basically fancy checklists, for all of the customer acquisition tasks. And then rather than do those things myself, or rather than hire expensive salespeople in North America to do those things for me, I hired an army of workers from the Philippines for a tiny fraction of the cost of what American salespeople would cost. And so the level of our prospecting was orders of magnitude higher than our competitors, and that's why we grew so much quicker. Put simply, if you make 10 cold calls a day and I make 500 cold calls a day, I'm going to win, just sheer numbers. So the success of that business and the fact that I was producing content around that business led to my getting invited to speak at a conference. There was 500 or so people in the audience. I was telling them more or less what I told you, but I went into great detail of how I did it all in about an hour and a half talk. And much to my surprise, when I got off stage, I was bombarded with people who said, hey, loved your story, loved everything you've done. I've been watching your stuff for years. I really would like to buy a copy of all of your SOPs, your standard operating procedures. So we decided to sell those as an experiment, and much to my surprise, we sold $400 and some thousand worth of them in the first 5 days. So yours truly made a profit of $200,000 in 1 week. I mean, I never made more than $200,000 in a year, and suddenly I made $200,000 in a week, which was nuts. And then we went on to sell millions of dollars of those things. So you remember, if you watched my side gigs for CFI's video, I talked about information products. And so I have real experience there, and they can be extremely lucrative if you do it right. So I tell you that story to underscore, that was a really tremendous experience. It was financially a game changer for me. And I learned the value of product businesses versus service businesses firsthand. But now we go into another chapter of struggle in my life, because what I did from that business is I got into the software space. Because all of those, when we first sold that product, it lived in what is now a competitor's software platform. And after the first 5 days when we sold $400,000 worth, I called up a good buddy of mine And he was a tech guy, he's a software guy, and one of my best friends in life, actually. And I said, look, this is what happened. I think we need to build a software company. See a theme, a recurring theme here? Not a whole lot of research on Trent's part, just sort of shoot first, ask questions later. And he agreed. And so we started to build the company. And for the first 2 years, it made a lot of money. But then we lost a key affiliate. That is someone who sends us customers. And that was brutal, to say the least. That affiliate decided to rip off my product and cut me out of the loop. Thanks, Dan, butthead, because he thought, well, that way I could keep all the money and I don't have to share it with Trent. So that's what he did. Good integrity on that guy's part. But, you know, what was I going to do? I wasn't going to take him to court because I knew that the lawyers were going to end up with the money. So I just walked away from it. I didn't walk away from the business. I just walked away from that particular product, which was a playbook for other people who were selling stuff on Amazon. So that put us into a situation where we now had to compete with many, many others. So we went from being the dominant niche provider to now just sort of another Me Too software product in a broader niche. And so that business I own to this day. It basically just kind of chugs along and it makes money, but not enough money, and it doesn't grow, and that's frustrating. And so that was what really kind of got me looking for ideas, a new mentor. I mean, for the last year, I've done absolutely nothing with that business, but I've sort of found some fire again lately. Not enough to derail my plans of becoming a pilot, don't worry, as I'm going to explain in the remainder of this video. I want to become successful with this business on my own terms, without sabotaging my plan A of going and becoming an airline pilot. Because as I've mentioned many times before, the reason for the airline pilot is easy job, high level of income, lots of jobs, relatively lots of job security, especially as the years go by and seniority increases. So if nothing else were to work out for me, I'd still have a pretty good gig taking me in towards my retirement and allowing me to invest in real estate along the way. But nonetheless, I've got this software company. It's a really great product. And I think that there's opportunities there to grow it, because through this new mentor of mine, I've learned there are some things that I didn't understand about advertising in particular, and about creating offers and so forth. So for those of you who are still with me, maybe I've lost a whole bunch of you by now and I'm just talking to myself. I am, as a part of managing and growing my personal brand, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I'm really keen to create more content like this in addition to the flying content, because I see new possibilities for that business. I see big possibilities for my personal brand, and I see the opportunity to continue to grow, learn, and earn on my own terms, which is very appealing to me. And I love to share my journeys, as I've done with Fly with Trent. I shared my journey at flight school. So my goals here for me, and maybe for you, if you're coming along, what I want you to get from this video and from future videos like this one is, number one, how to create an incredible quality of life. Number two, how to build and create more financial freedom for yourself than you ever thought possible. And I'm going to do that for me as well, because that's my goal. And then to give back. You know, that's why I started Fly with Trent. It was all an experiment, and I thought, well, you know, I'll just put this video up. Is 53 too old to become an airline pilot? And here we are. And now on a weekly basis, I get emails from people that say, I am becoming an airline pilot in part because of what I learned from your content. And I never get tired of getting those emails. So if you're doing that and you haven't sent me one of those emails yet, please do, because I love getting those emails. So I really do like to give back. And I think that I have a lot more to give over and above just making videos about aviation. So if that sounds cool to you, then please do leave me a comment. Let me know what you're interested in. If you've ever thought of starting a business, let me know what it was. Or if you had a business and it worked or it didn't work, let me know what it is. The more you can help me to understand who you are and what you're trying to do and what your goals are and what your struggles are, the better it will equip me to make more content like this in the future. And like I say, I've already got quite a number of ideas of thinking of sharing this journey of trying to really restart the growth of my software company using advertising, which is not something that I've really ever used very much before, because I've been largely ignorant of it for my entire career, because I've never really been one to spend on ads. Lots to learn, lots of cool stuff ahead. I hope you've really enjoyed this video. If you have, please do give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. And if this is your first time watching any of my videos, be sure and make sure that you subscribe to the channel. And if you want to get on the email list, you can go over to flywithtrent.com and you can join the email list there. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been a long one, but I hope you enjoyed it. Look forward to seeing the next one soon. Take care. Bye-bye.